Okay, Chavches. This is in the Gersa Kaddish, which the Alter Rebbe wrote the Helika Baditchever on the stalkers of his son Reb Meir. And the way I see it is this way: Reb Meir was a big tzaddik. He was opposite. Baditchever was a kind. Oh, Ben Ishmael Rebbe. The last letter was about a Rebbe, so he brought the idea of the tzaddik, the stalik, the spata. In any case, so it's a letter which was written to the Baditchever. So in the last letter, the koch was on the inyan of tzaddik, the spata, the shtakach. He's still here. This letter doesn't talk so much about the presence of the tzaddik in this world, as much as it talks about the benefit in this world of the etzem inyan that the tzaddik passed away. So he begins like this: Chavches, Mashakosav leMechutani, Alter Rebbe to his mechutn, Hanavagona mafutz Mishal Lekim Kadosh Hashem, Neir Yoyer Amodayamini Patash Hachazak, Meirenu Arav Levi Yitzchak Shmas Eden, Av Bezen the Kills Kadishas Baditchev, Lenachame Aptiras Bnei Rav Chassid Bnei Meir Nishmas Eden, to console him on the stalkers of his son Reb Meir. Okay, this against Kaddish talks about the Nekud is against Kaddish is 2 points. Number one, that the stalkers of tzaddikim is mavared even sholosh klipas at meis lagamri, not just klipas negen. And number two, the stalkers of a tzaddik affects that it should be a hamshacha lamata, like you'll see. So the Alter Rebbe begins Lama Nismach Pashas Miriam and the Pashas Parah. The Gemara says, why is the story of Miriam's passing away right next to the story of Parah Aduma? And the Gemara answers, it comes to teach you, Ma Parah Mechaperes v'chol. Just like Parah Aduma. Just like Parah Aduma is Mechaper. Because it's called Mechatos, so means it's Tzaddikim goes for Mechaper. Now I want you to know, it's a very bad corollary. Why? Because Parah Aduma is not a korban. Okay? The dinya, the Parah Aduma, Tvul Yem is allowed to be makar of Parah Aduma. They will metam everybody with Tvul Yem, so there should be Yetzi Liban Shal Tzdukim. Parah Aduma is not a korban. A korban, you're not allowed to be a Tvul Yem. Tvul Yem is Pesach. It's the din of a Shlishi L'tumah. So Parah Aduma was not a korban. Chachafil, in other respects, there was a Maila. Paras Chatas has a higher Maila by Kaddish, even than Kochim. By Kochim is a Revi, and by Chatas is a Chamishi. At the same time, it wasn't a korban. So the Gemara says the Torah picked a korban, which is kam a korban, to correlate this idea that to look at tzaddikim, misas tzaddikim is the same as a kapara of a korban. You could have picked a regular korban chatas. Why do you pick a korban chatas which is kam a korban? Why would the Torah compare the misas tzaddikim to the Parah Aduma based on the principle that Parah Aduma is mechaper? Which is done outside the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore it's not a korban. It's only called a chatos. As they said in Pasuk, chatos he. It's not mamash a chatos. There's a lesser standard of kedusha and tahara. You have to do it. So if you're going to pick a korban, to bring out the point that the passing away tzaddikim has the same effect as kapara, as look at tzaddikim, don't pick Parah Aduma. Okay, and that's as b'chutz now. Bring a regular korban chatos, which is done inside the Beis Hamikdash, and the corollary, the comparison will be much better. Agabi HaMizbeach, on top of the Beach, which is kapara mamish. At mamish was mechaper, at mamish was kinuach, at mamish clean the way the Avedis, and the midas tzaddikim was also mechaper. This is the question. And for the Alter Rebbe, made the Mezer Kodesh Varizal, the Teretz was a pikabola in Zeir and Arizal. Say that Kabbalah Agabi HaMizbeach. It requires us to analyze the inyan of karbonas b'chlal HaMizbeach. What was the Indian of a korban? You were lifting up Maya Nukfan, feminine waters. In other words, it's a Rusad Latata. From this world upwards, Minefesh Bahamas. The behemoth was an animal. And the idea of a korban was you were sacrificing the animal, and the Pnimiyat Tanya, you were sacrificing your own animal. Shabanega, which comes from Klipas Nega, as opposed to Shalosh Klipas at Meis, there's 3 impure Klipas. And a korban, you're taking klipa, but a klipa of nega, shtikul behema, you're bringing it closer to the Eibishter, and you're lifting it up, al shoshan and mekaron, to a truth and its source. Hein bechin edal chayas sheberekava, the 4 animals mekava, which are also in bria, they're not in atzilus. Haneis is the kisa, which are carrying the kisa covered, which is atzilus. Pnei shed or pnei neshed b'chol, the face of an ox, the face of an eagle, and so forth. So the idea is you take a physical animal, and along with the physical animal, there's also the inyan for the akrava of the spiritual animal, and you're doing you're lifting it up till bria, right? And then when you lift it up till bria, it's maila the kisei, the alakus, which is in atzilus. By days and shacham, and it brings down v'yedim, and it descends mad. Mayim dechud in masculine waters, which is Esrus Leila. And Bechinas Adam Sha'ala Kisei, from the Adam, which goes to another kus, which is on the chair, Hanika B'Shem Malka V'Zo, which is called the king and the Eiram. So the carbon goes up till Bria, and it lifts up Atzilus. Because that's how it works. The Chayas, the animals, are carrying the chair. And when you bring up Chayas to the animal, the animals, that means the Merkava has an Aliyah, and it says Chayas Neifis is a Kisei. They lifted up the Kisei, and the Adam Sha'ala Kisei. In other words, as if you were to say that there's an Aliyah in Atzilus. And therefore, when Atzilus has an Aliyah, Atzilus brings down. And from Atzilus, which is called Adam, is Hamshach, which is bring down Mamayla Lamat. So the Seder of a carbon is you mavada klipas neiga, you mavada your own behemoth, it's a kosher behemoth. It goes up till Bria, which lifts up Atzilus, and it's Mamshach Mad, Ashpa back. Zochte, this is all klipas neiga, as you'll see soon. Achen, however, they say, as a paraduma, when they burned the paraduma ash, or the animal, made it ash. Hine, ayadei hashloch as 8 eres ve'ezev chuli, when they poured through it the 8 eres, the cedar tree, and the ezev, the grass, and so forth. When the sinas ma'im chaim ala'efa, and then specifically after it was burnt, and then they drew water from the shalei, they drew water from Emei Mayon, right? And then they sprinkled the ash into this water. When they put the ash into the water, this is called kiddush. Says the Rebbe, "Unasinas ma'im chaim ala'efa," and putting the living water into the ash, nikir b'shem kiddush, it's called kiddush. Bring a kedusha mechatas, the waters of chatas, b'mishnah. So even though paraduma has a big process, shechting the animal, sprinkling the blood, burning the animal, adding the ezev and the eres and so forth, when is it called kiddush? When they put the ash in. So I don't know why he brings the details of eres ve'ezev, it's not negeh. Bottom line is, when they use the ash of the paraduma to b'mitayir a person, the event of preparing that water was called kiddush mechatas. Says the Alter Rebbe, the idea of kiddush, when you put the ash into the water, it was an inyan from kiddush. There's a holiness which is on high, a higher level of holiness, which is chachma v'atzilus, hadikir b'shem talad v'docha, which is called the dew of crystal. Now, kiddush is chachma, talad v'docha is gevuras of atika kaddish. Chachma has a connection specifically to the gevuras of atika kaddish. And normally, gevuras are lower than chasadim, but atika, like I told you on Thursday night, in Atika Kaddish it's fakir, the gevuras are higher than the chasadim. In Chochma, you're mamshech gevuras of Atika Kaddish, and the point is that Chochma is able to be mavarid, able to fix. Why? Why is Chochma able to fix? Because it's totally fixed in itself. The Chochma is beridu. Every bit that happens through Chochma, because Chochma is totally mavura. Why is Chochma totally mavura? Because in Chochma you have the Talad, the Notif, Atika Kaddish, you have gevuras savata. Tahala means dew of crystal. When she goes to Bezeira Kodesh, she begins Chachma Elad, because of Chachma Vatzilas. But inside Chachma Vatzilas, you have a Moichas, Timad Arachampan. You have the hidden Moyach, hidden brain of Keser. In other words, it's not just Atzilas is Chachma, but you have Chachma even higher. Til Atika Kaddish. Now, since Paradum is called Kiddush, Mamshech Chachma, by the way, which is not by other Kabbanas is Mamshech Zeirampan, Midas of Atzilas. But not Chochma Vatzilas. So regular Kabbanas which are Mamshech only Midas of Atzilas from a second Klipas Nega. We now know a Paraduma, even though it's only Chatas Kaya Rachmonis, that's Mamshech Korban Chatas. We only call it a Korban Chatas. Nevertheless, it's Mamshech Chochma from a higher Madrego. This is why it says in a lot of places in Zeh, but Chochma is Beridu. Chochma has the power to create clarification, to transform darkness into light. Why? Because since Chochma is totally fixed in itself, there's absolutely no klipa whatsoever in Chochma. Chochma is absolutely clear, crystallized clear. It can be clarifying something else. The Hainu, in other words, Elam Atikun, it's the world of perfect correctedness. Shenis Barer, Vinis Hapech. It's already been clarified and corrected. Vinis Taken and corrected. Adei Mechas Timad Arech. So the hidden Moyach of Arech Ampen, which really has in its words of Atika Kadisha. Okay, and when you're bringing down Chochmei Elah and Chochmei Stima and words of Atika Kadisha, you're able to be Mavarer Klipa Me'ela Mateu, that the source of Klipa comes from Eila Mateu. Ushvirat Sakelim, with the broken vessel, Shenafel B'Biyav V'Chuli, which fell into the lower worlds, Bria, Yitzir and Asiya, and so forth, Kineda, as we know. In other words, since Paras Chatas is Mamshech Chochma, not Shazah, it's Mavarer the worst Klipis. Well, the zeis, and therefore, look inside, metaheres tumas hameis. It can make pure even a tumah associated with death. After who avia avos v'cholu, it's the worst kind of tumah. Well, the mata minega, much lower than Noah. The Rebbe tzich kocht in Noah, nega. The Rebbe tzich kocht in the Medrash. There's a sicha, chafal avodah tavshin memches, which I'll never forget. Shloshim for the Rebbe. It's a very emotional sicha. And the Rebbe Yamud gesagt, it was a zeis chukas ateda, it was Pashas Parah. So it's about Parah Duma, and he said that when the Eibusha told Moshe Rabbeinu that a tumas mess, that a mess is metame, niskarchemu ponav shal Moshe metayra, say, how could something, if a dead person is not metame, if the dead person has no life, it's not metame, right? A stone is not metame. Why? It has no life. Only something with a little life is metame. If a dead person is not metame, it's not metame. But if a dead person is metame, in other words, he has so little life, and yet there's a tumah, so it's the worst kind of tumah. So the Chazal say, niskarchemu ponav shal Moshe, Moshe's face turned red. But metayra, say, how could there possibly be a tahara of Parah Duma? And the Eibusha answered, how could there possibly be a correction of tumas meis? And the Eibusha answered him, zeis chukas atera. And according to what we're learning now, it's a kerch that comes from Chochmah and Tala, the Bedulcha, from Gvurah Vatika Kadisha, which can be misaken even Charles Kibbutz at Meis Adam. And that's why the correlation that's made between Chatos and Tziluk and Tzadikim is dafka Parah Duma, not a regular carbon Chatos. You understood?